Hey guys, while I wait for a little more rust to dissolve on my Filca 15DX speakers, I thought I would take a look at a set I had restored some months back and see if I can tweak it a little bit better. It's the Admiral 16R11. It's a 16-inch Admiral tabletop TV in a black Bakelite cabinet. If you recall, I got this set working fairly well, but few things I want to address. One is the back for the set won't quite fit on the back of the cabinet. The chassis won't slide forward all the way on one side, and it's sticking out enough that I can't securely attach the back. Now, I think that's because the picture tube isn't seated quite right. So this chassis was made to accommodate the rapidly changing picture tube technology of the late 40s, early 50s. You can see it's got a scoop out here for round picture tubes, and it's got adjustable brackets here so it could accommodate a variety of sizes of rectangular picture tubes. So you can imagine you could slide this in on both sides and put like a 14-inch picture tube in here, or a 16. What's currently in here is actually a 17, even though this set was originally designed for a 16-inch picture tube. In fact, I think there were something like 21 different production runs using this chassis. So that's one thing. Two, I'm hoping while I do that, it will correct another little defect. The bottom right-hand corner of this picture is distorted. It's kind of bent or twisted a little bit. I'll fire this set up with a test pattern and just show you what I mean in a moment. Something else that was an issue with this set, there were some faint vertical lines on the left-hand side. And I also went through the same thing with the 16R12 console version. It's a very similar chassis. Now, if you look in the service notes, there's a whole bunch of possibilities, from checking your tubes, to shielding, to how the wires are dressed, to even going so far as to adding an aftermarket filter. Well, one thing I realized when I just pulled this chassis out is that I had neglected to reinstall this IF shield. So that could be causing some problems. Also notice that when I went to install it, that some of these wires here, if I don't, or some of those wires were kind of getting crushed by the filter. I don't know if that's how it was originally made, or somehow these wires might have gotten shorter when I worked on this section. Like this red wire is the main one in the way, and that goes to one of the filter caps that I'd rebuilt. So perhaps when I reconnected it, I cut a bit of the end off of the wire. I don't know. But at any rate, I want to replace that wire so I can get it well out of the way. See, the shield comes in right about here, and it's really putting a lot of stress on that wire. So if I get one in there a couple inches longer, I can move it and route it well out of the way. Alright, something else is that retrace lines are visible on this set when you crank up the brightness. Well, it just happens to be a circuit modification that will get rid of that. Add a 270K resistor and a 0.05 microfarad cap in a certain place and get rid of those. And then while I got it out, I might as well use some of the newer test equipment I got since I worked on this set, like the Suncor test pattern generator, to do some fine tweaks on this set. It turns out my memory was a little bit faulty when it comes to this set. There actually isn't really any distortion down here. I think that was the console version with the same set I was thinking of. But the other issues are true. So here's that retrace line I was talking about. When you turn up the brightness, it gets more and more noticeable. So it's going down right through there. So that circuit modification, we can get rid of that line. And if I change the test pattern to dots, I think you can see those vertical lines I'm talking about. Not really noticeable when you're watching some live programming, but I want to see if we can reduce that. So it might be as simple as installing that IF shield and moving the wires out of the way. We'll see. Also, doesn't seem like the channels are aligned quite right. Go back to this pattern. So this is channel 3. I put on channel 4. Put this on channel 4. The picture's not so hot. It's not quite as distinct as on channel 3, and fine-tuning doesn't really help any. And as for sound, it's alright, I guess. But what I want to try doing is, there's a little hole down here. You can put an alignment tool in there and tweak the oscillator slug for each channel, and I think that'll take care of that. Channel 3, I think the sound's off a bit too. Or I should say, the best sound is when the fine-tuning is all the way at one extent. If I go back the other way, it starts getting distorted. Ideally, you want to have the best fine-tuning right in the middle of its travel. Alright, so first up, to do the IF shield to eliminate that as a possibility for some of this interference we're hearing. You probably also noticed the sound was a bit garbled. I think there's also some signals leaking into the IF and the sound from the high voltage or something like that. And after that, I'll do the retrace circuit modification, and then I'll fire the set back up, and let's see where things stand. I just finished replacing that wire that was too short with the new one. So it goes down around here and up here, bends around. So I was able to reinstall the IF shield. I also printed out a little list here of what I want to do so I don't forget anything. So we got the first one done, install IF shield. Next, add retrace suppression modification. Well, traced out the wiring, and this is the key point right here. This is the wire going to the picture tube that we need to modify. That goes right to the center tap on the brightness control. We want to disconnect this and add a 270K resistor in series with that wire. And at the other end of this, the one that's going to the CRT, we're going to attach to the vertical oscillator circuit. What that's going to do is it's going to apply a pulse to pin 2 on the picture tube every time the screen finishes drawing top to bottom and flips back up. That's where you get that zigzag line appearing. That's the vertical retrace. If you blank out the electron gun during that period, you won't get that zigzag. So after this resistor, we'll need to add a capacitor down into somewhere around here. I still have to locate that part. I added a little terminal strip down here, disconnected the center of the brightness potentiometer, put on a 270K resistor over to here. Here's where I relocated the wire to the CRT. Here's my 0.05 microfarad cap, and this wire is going over to the key point right there where you pick off the signal from the vertical oscillator, which is this point right there between this resistor and that capacitor. That's going to vary for every single make and model of TV. I'll include a link in the description showing you where you can find some of these riders' service tips and tricks for modifying your sets. Alright, so I reinstalled the IF shield and I've powered it up. But now we've got a problem. That's the best picture I can get. It's not syncing and the picture's totally washed out. Unless I turn the brightness way down. So let's see what pattern I've got. Dots. Let's go to chroma bar sweep. So I guess the brightness is working alright. Contrast. But I can't get a lock. So I'm going to undo the last thing I did, which is put this IF shield on and see what difference that makes. Perhaps I pinched some wires under there or something. Yeah, there's definitely something funky going on with that shield. So now we got a messed up picture. I'll put a nut driver on the last screw holding it on. As I start to loosen it up, There we go. Get a solid picture back. So, something is not happy when I tighten that screw down. So what might that be? I thought I cleared everything out of the way. Oh, wait a minute. So I got all my wires cleared out of the way, but look at what's right at the edge right there. That is a video peaking coil, I do believe. And I think I'm kind of crushing it and probably shorting out some windings when I tighten that nut down. That's a very bad thing, so I gotta get this shield off and push that coil out of the way. Luckily, I don't think there's any permanent harm done, but if you look close right there, you can see where the edge of that metal cover scraped through the waxy coating, and I think scraped through the enamel coating on the wire, and it was actually shorting out a winding of this coil to ground through that shield. So very, very bad thing. I'm going to push this down out of the way carefully. It's got pretty thick leads on it, so I'll have to use some needle nose pliers. I'm going to put a little dab of something over that, maybe some shellac to reseal it, or maybe I'll melt a little wax. I pushed the coil out of the way, put a little dab of shellac where the coating got nicked, put the cover back on, just fired it back up. And it's adjusting the horizontal hold. There we go. Alright, so that looks pretty good. So let's see, I'll use a different pattern. Color bars. Or I'll go with that. Alright, so let's see. If I turn the contrast on and crank the brightness up, alright, no retrace lines whatsoever. Totally max out the brightness control. So that modification is doing exactly what it's supposed to. Cool. I also noticed that those lines on the left are not quite so noticeable now, so that shield I think has helped out. Let's see, I'll try some different patterns here. There's crosshatch. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. Linearity is pretty good too. Something there's going to need to be much adjustment. Because I'm pretty sure I went through and did the linearity when I restored it the first time around. Some multi-burst, that gives you an indication of how good or how well it's aligned, and this looks to be pretty solid. Alright, cool. So what's left on my list? Oh yeah, I want to tweak the channel slug. I'll hold off on that until I feed in some actual programming material. Best to tweak that when I can hear some sound other than what's the high-pitched tone coming out of my VA62. And replace the speaker wire. That I can certainly do. The reason I added that is when I was hooking this set up on the workbench, I noticed that the old speaker wire is in pretty crappy condition. Some places where the insulation's completely worn through and that wire is about ready to come apart. So I think I can heat up the tips of this plug and pull the wires out, disconnect them from the speaker, and look around and find some suitable stranded flexible wire. I replaced some of the rubber mounts on the front and moved the CRT a little bit so it's seated more evenly, but not quite there yet with being able to get the back on. Left side's fine, top's pretty much fine, but as you can see down here in the bottom right, won't go on all the way. And if you look down here, You can see the back, there's a bit of a gap here, so the back's pushed in enough to reveal some of the back, or some of the case. But when you get to this side, the chassis is actually flush with the back. In other words, it should go in maybe another 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch on this side. So I'm going to slide this back out, and to get this back any further, I'm going to have to loosen up this yoke housing here. There's a couple screws on either side. You can actually slide it forward and back. So I'll move it back about 1/8 of an inch. Let's see if I can get the set to slide back, because the limiting factor here is CRT hitting this plastic bezel that goes all the way around. So in other words, to get the chassis in any further into the cabinet, the picture tube has to go back on the chassis. So here's what I was talking about. The picture tube is supposed to go back as far as it can, so it's firmly seated into the yoke here. So it can't go back any further this way unless I can move this whole assembly back, and you can, because they have these slotted mounts here. So if I loosen up 2 bolts on this side and the other side, I actually have quite a bit of leeway here. I can go back about another 1/2 inch. I'm not going to go back quite that far. And then I can move this picture tube back, and I'll add some more rubber cushioning material in here into this mounting bracket. Alright, that looks a lot more promising. I've got almost 1/4 of an inch now. And yeah, that'll fit on no problem. This may seem like a minor thing, but so many sets are missing the backs that having one does increase the value, at least to some collectors. Also, this is a pretty nifty back. It's in really good condition. It's got the cup that goes over the CRT base to protect it, and it's got this nice label about using the built-in antenna, which is actually missing from this set. Although I think I might have a spare lying around. We'll see. That's basically just a piece of cardboard with kind of an aluminum glued to it to form like an X shape that makes an antenna you could hook up internally. Alright, so this is where the power cord connects, and it goes into the interlock, and there's a screw on either side. So the original power cord would have been the kind with ears, like the one I've got right here, like so. So this attaches like so. I'm going to have to trim that away a little bit to fit through that circle. Or perhaps it actually goes on. No, it doesn't quite fit from that side either. Oh, I can trim it up a bit and make it fit. So this will attach to these 2 holes, and then these 2 outer holes attach to the back of the chassis. The idea is when you take the back off, it pulls the plug out so nobody can accidentally plug in the set without the back being attached. But of course, servicemen want to do that all the time, hence the cheater cord, so you can plug the set in without the back being on. Alright, I got the back installed. And the power cord, I heated up the end of this cheater cord with a heat gun and mushed it through that metal bracket, and then screwed the bracket to the chassis so it's on there very securely. Also installed a 75 300 ohm adapter so I can hook it up to something like this over-the-air digital to analog converter. So where does that leave us on the checklist? IF shield, retrace suppression, did replace the speaker wires. Some 2 new wires down here. I repositioned the CRT obviously, so we got the back on. I already made the final adjustments. That was centering the picture and horizontal vertical linearity. So, we'll tweak the channel slug and replace the control door. I'll rotate the set around and I'll make that adjustment. They conveniently provide a hole in the cabinet, so if you take the control panel off and pull the knob off, you can get a tool in here to tweak the oscillator coil for each channel. It's just a plastic dowel, sort of, with one end filed, kind of like a plastic screwdriver. You don't want to use metal because that'll mess up the settings. Alright, and there.
That's a shame. You see, there was a group of us at a party here. A very nice party here.
So now great sound, but the picture's kind of crappy.
We cheated little old Uncle Sam out of a considerable number of Navy engines.
But the sound's really good.
And of course...
Get the other one. Picture's pretty sharp now.
20 years ago,
sounds good. So it's typically two positions where there's really good sound. And one will have good sound with a kind of a crappy picture, and one will have good sound with a pretty good picture. So
that's right.
Yeah, that's right about there. Now if I tweak the fine tuning to either side, a nice adjustment range. Alright, the control panel and door that came with this set is damaged. This corner was broken off and the hinge pin was missing. I glued up the corner a little bit, and I could fabricate another pin and I could make it work again, but as luck would have it, I found one in much better condition on eBay. The hinge control door works quite nicely. Only problem with it is there's some paint loss on the control door. It's reverse brass painted, and as you can see, it's all scratched up. But I'm just going to leave it as is. I'll leave it to the owner of this set, because the set does not belong to me. If he wants to touch that up, so be it. All I'm going to do right now is use a little Novus number 2 and clean up the plastic a bit, and then it mounts on with 5 little screws, like so. Just one last knob to install. A nice touch you can do with knobs is to add some felt. This is actually the original felt that came with this set. That will help prevent the knobs from scratching up the control door or each other, but it also helps provide some isolation between these two knobs so that when you turn one, it doesn't bind up and rotate the other one as well. Alright, I'll power it up and do one final test, and then I'll call this really done this time. Enjoyed another look at this Admiral 16R11 set.
How very can be. Cross-examine, Mr. Mason. As a paid lobbyist, did you report on your income tax all the monies that...
Please? I feel awful. Can I have some more potion?
Not this time, sweetie. It's time you paid me back.
How?
I want the Crux Mutator. I can't pass the voice